Chapter 75. Edmund died. The man died miserably. His neck was cut with a steel wire. That was not the correct way to say it. The perpetrator was not strong enough to cut a neck, or perhaps he or she did not want to get blood on their hands. Ed died from suffocation. The wire was clearly embedded deep into the flesh of his neck, leaving a very thin purple mark. After police officer John discovered that Ed was dead, he shouted for Duke. A barricade was set up around the scene, and police officers with guns forced all the guests to go downstairs. The person who opened the door to room number 4 was a skinny boy with short platinum hair. When he saw the police officer with the gun, he was stunned for a moment, then immediately calmly turned his head to look behind him. The blonde girl who had kept a cold expression since entering the door walked out, and when she saw the police, her expression did not change much. It seemed that she was not surprised by the incident, raised her hand to signal that she had no intention of attacking, and led the boy downstairs. Next to room number 2, after knocking on the door, the man in the suit came out. His expression had an imperceptible change. However, although he tried his best to hide it, John, who had graduated from the police academy and had many years of experience in the profession, still noticed something strange. John's expression did not change. He solemnly invited the newlyweds downstairs, but in his heart he was suspicious. Finally, room number 1, Malcolm, the man who also came to the hotel in the police car, opened the door very quickly. He smiled and greeted the 2 policemen. "What's the matter?" John saw him, remembering that Ed had given him a pack of toilet paper in the car. His mood suddenly dropped. He sighed, briefly recounted the murder in the hotel, and at the same time signaled him to follow him downstairs for questioning and investigation. Malcolm was stunned. The man's body like a mountain of flesh trembled slightly. His eyes revealed surprise and sympathy. "Police officer Ed is dead? How could such a terrible thing happen?" "I'm so sorry," Malcolm sighed, walked out, his face sad, patted the police officer on the shoulder. "Please hold back your grief." He obediently went downstairs. After Siddle went downstairs, the newlyweds and Malcolm also went downstairs one after another. 2 police officers followed behind them. After going downstairs, the first thing she saw was another corpse on the first floor of the hotel. Something had really happened. And it was such a cruel murder case. A group of guests walked down to the first floor one after another. Their reactions were very different. It seemed like someone let out a very small gasp, but it was impossible to tell who it was. The hotel quickly fell into silence. The ugly man sitting in the corner was probably also summoned by the police to sit at a table under the lights because of the murder case. For some unknown reason, he was drenched, and drops of water occasionally fell from the hem of his clothes. In the dark and cramped hotel, everyone looked at each other in silence. Originally, someone's death should be a big deal, and the person who died was a policeman with a gun. But the strange thing was that at this moment, there was no commotion, panic, or uneasiness in the hotel. Everyone was silent. The atmosphere was extremely strange. But this strange atmosphere was not just because of the death of a person. Siddle looked down, silently taking his eyes off the body of police officer Ed and the crooked handwriting next to the body. Someone had taken a pen from the hotel reception desk and written an extremely provocative line next to the body of police officer Ed. "You, all, will, die." The blonde girl put her hands in her pockets, standing aside with Belch, her eyes sweeping over the rest of the people. Everyone went downstairs. Initially they all had the mentality of outsiders. After seeing this line of words, they all fell silent. It seemed like they began to quietly evaluate each other. The newlyweds also stood aside. Like Siddle, they chose to stand on the other side of the room. Malcolm moved closer to the 2 policemen. The ugly man also unconsciously moved his chair. After all, if only one person died, even if it was intentional murder, it could also be revenge. However, this line of words clearly broke everyone's lucky mentality. There was a perverted murderer hiding in the hotel, and this pervert was currently targeting all of them. "Really?" someone muttered in a low voice, but the few people were far apart. Siddle couldn't hear what that person said. But from the tone of his voice, It was probably not a good word, he was probably scolding the unknown murderer. Siddle pressed his forehead and glanced at the female corpse in the corner. The white plastic sheet on her body was lifted halfway by someone, revealing her naked upper body. The female corpse's head was slightly tilted to one side, as if someone had touched it, the two blue pupils still motionless looking at the body of police officer Ed. Who could the murderer be? Who would be the murderer? John was also thinking about this problem. He was in a very bad mood now. He still remembered the years he worked with Ed. Although Ed was not a dedicated policeman, he had never made any big mistakes. They were colleagues who had known each other for several years, but after only an hour, when they met again, they had turned into a cold corpse. No matter who it was, the mood could not be good. Duke's face was solemn, as if he was in a bad mood. John could only suppress the sadness in his heart and personally question the people in front of him. He took a deep breath, put on a dignified expression, and glanced at the people around him. Everyone has seen what happened, John said. Now, in order to prove that you are not a suspect and to facilitate the process of catching the culprit, everyone must declare their identities first. This is for everyone's safety, understand? If anyone does not give a clear statement. He raised the gun in his hand, signaling, then there will be even more suspicion. After he finished speaking, everyone remained silent, but their eyes wavered a little. John was not worried that this group of people would not cooperate. After all, he believed that innocent people also wanted to find the culprit to avoid being harmed themselves. Okay, Malcolm was the first to answer. He raised his hand and said, "My name is Malcolm. I'm a senior marketing staff at GT Company in the city. I've been working there for several years. If you need it, I can provide my employee card and ID card, and I have my colleagues' numbers in my phone. They can all testify for me. I've never made a mistake. Whether it's in work or in life." He took out his phone. The text message history on the phone proved that Malcolm wasn't lying. "Then why are you here?" John asked. "Today is a day off." Malcolm scratched his head. "I originally planned to go on a vacation to a rural town to relax and rest. Who would have thought that the storm would affect this place? After the storm came, I had no choice but to leave the town. Unexpectedly, both sides of the road were blocked, and the car was stuck in the mud in the middle of the road. If I hadn't met you police officers, I would still be risking my life here in the pouring rain." Malcolm's words were temporarily not suspicious. The next person to speak was the ugly man. "My name doesn't matter, but if you want to know, you can call me Colm." Colm swallowed, his cloudy eyes leaving the body of police officer Ed, opening his mouth with sparse teeth. "I live in a town nearby. It's a small town in the countryside, nothing special. My job is to process dead animals in the forest and transport them to specialized morgues. Today, while I was transporting the bodies, something unexpected happened. The rain flooded the road, so I drove here to take shelter. I don't know what happened." After he finished speaking, there was no movement. The others frowned slightly, showing disgust when they discovered this person's identity. It turned out to be a corpse transporter. No wonder he had such a foul smell. John frowned, but before he could ask anything, the newlywed spoke up. "My name is Charlie." The man in the suit raised his eyebrows, looking a little arrogant. "Perhaps you have heard of my full name?" He blurted out a name, looking proud. "You must have heard of my family. I am the only son of this generation in the family. This is my newlywed wife Penelope. I don't think I need to say anything more. After knowing my identity, you should understand. My wife and I cannot be the culprit." His words were very certain, resounding and powerful. But this man named Charlie was indeed qualified to do so. The name he mentioned came from a wealthy family that had become wealthy since the American Civil War and continued to this day, still a famous wealthy family. "I don't often appear in the news." He also raised his phone. "But I can also provide you with proof of my identity." Charlie's phone contained photos of him and his family members, some of whom were indeed big shots who occasionally appeared on American news. The man wore expensive clothes, had an outstanding temperament, and his statements were also beyond dispute. He and his wife had no reason to kill anyone. But the statements of these people sounded perfect, but in fact they were full of loopholes and omissions, and some even deliberately avoided some issues. John didn't say anything, and he and the others looked at the last corner at the same time. The blonde girl raised her eyebrows, her expression unchanged, and said, "My name is Siddle, and this is my younger brother Belch. I'm a graduate of the 20th high school this year. I came to Derry to relax during the summer vacation and help my aunt look after my younger brother. However, the storm caused the airport to shut down, so my younger brother took me to another airport, but I got stuck here because of the heavy rain. If you need to prove your identity, you can also." Finally, everyone's identity information was collected, but John was not in a good mood. He glanced around and said coldly, "The culprit is still in this hotel, most likely one of you. Now we have to work together to find this person. If any of you lie, everyone will be harmed, understand?" The scene became silent, several people looked at each other but no one answered, the atmosphere was momentarily extremely stifling. John. He couldn't see anything from the reactions of these people, so he could only choose the group that seemed the most suspicious at the moment. "You two." John pointed at the newlywed couple. "Are you two getting married today?" he asked, his sharp eyes sweeping over them. "I haven't told you why you two are here. The wedding of the only son of a wealthy family is a big event, but there's no news about you two in the newspapers, and also your wife, Miss Penelope. What happened to your wedding dress?" When the police interrogation turned to Charlie and Penelope, the others also turned their eyes, staring at them, waiting for them to give a reasonable explanation. For a moment, Charlie's eyes showed panic, he opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but didn't know how to say it. Penelope, who had been obediently holding his arm since entering the hotel, raised her beautiful face and smiled. She reached out to tuck her hair behind her ear, her voice a little sad. Today was supposed to be Charlie and I's wedding, but during the ceremony, something unexpected happened, but it's not important and it doesn't help our current situation. But if you don't say it, no one will know what happened to you two, or whether you have any ill intentions towards the other people in the hotel. Malcolm interrupted Penelope, frowning seriously. "John," he swallowed the words that had just been snatched away, silently glancing at Malcolm. Colm grinned, revealing his black, sparse teeth, saying, "You should say it, it's still raining heavily outside, no one wants to be kicked out of here for unclear matters, right?" Perhaps it was because a murder that happened in the hotel had exceeded Colm's psychological limits, so now he had really changed his behavior. From someone who had initially considered himself an outsider, he started to take the initiative to talk, seemingly actively wanting to find the culprit. John was silent for a moment. Why did they suddenly interrogate each other? Now he, a policeman, stood to the side as if it was useless, watching them interrogate each other. All right. At this moment, facing the questions of many people, it seemed that Charlie had no other choice. He helplessly sighed, looking frustrated, "Then we can only tell you this.